Hey, this is Tuan Aditya from LightHaven. Today we're going to be going over some empty hand concepts from the Filipino martial arts that you can add into your shadowboxing or your solo training. Let's just quickly first establish the context in which we are working these empty hand drills. Now, I'm specifically speaking from the experience of my art, the art that I practice, which is called Pikiti Shakali. And maybe some other Filipino martial arts will approach it differently, but in our art we are taught about the importance of avoiding conflict because there's so many variables you just don't control out on the street. If I'm fighting somebody in a ring or if I'm training in a sports-based martial art, I know how long I'm fighting for, I know how many people I'm fighting, I know how they're armed, I know what the rules are, I know the area that we're fighting in. I have almost all of the variables under control except what actually happens in the fight. When I'm out on the street, I have none of these variables under control. I don't know how he's armed, I don't know how everybody else is going to react, I don't know how far away help is, there is no time limit, there are no rules. And because there are so many variables that are not in my control, it is in my own best interest to avoid conflict, because again, violence always has consequences. Now, if you cannot avoid conflict, if it is inevitable, then we want to be approaching this violence that we're about to enact in a certain way. Our job is not to pretend that we are part of a John Wick movie or that we're Batman and we're going to beat up 6 people. Our job in that is to keep our loved ones safe and to get home safe. If I can do these two things, then regardless of what happens in the actual conflict, in my eyes, I think I have done the best that I can, and my training has helped me come away alive. Now, in this context, range becomes a little bit different. Now, if I am in the ring and I'm fighting somebody, most likely we're going to start from outside of each other's fighting range, right? Outside of long range as well, where I cannot reach him with my legs, I cannot reach him with my hands, he cannot reach me with his legs or his hands, and we're moving around trying to find our way in to striking distance or whatever striking you may be doing in that specific art. However, in Pikiti, we assume that my opponent or my aggressor, the person who wants to fight with me, is in my face already. Because if he is at that long range sort of distance, then my first job or my main priority is to de-escalate the situation and get home. I want to be heading for the exit door. I don't want to be getting into a fight, especially when at this distance I can still avoid it. The assumption is that he's already bridged that distance and he's in my face. Maybe his hands are on me, but he's really close by, which is why maybe I cannot get away. My exit route is blocked, or I'm surrounded, or have people who I love around me. Either way, I have to fight, and he is really, really close. In this range is where my empty hands needs to be able to work. The second thing is understanding what the job of all the various tools that I have is going to be. So for example, at this range, kicking him in the head is going to be really hard and very unadvisable, right? Especially if there are weapons involved. My hands are going to be my primary striking tool, or my arms, because you can include your elbow, maybe even your shoulder if you get really close in such situations, maybe even your head. But my upper body tools, for lack of a better word, are going to be my primary striking tools. My lower body, my legs, the job of my legs is primarily going to be movement, to move me into a position where I can get the hell out of there as quickly as possible. That does not mean that if the opportunity presents itself, I do not knee or I do not kick. That does not mean, or I do not sweep. That does not mean that at all. It just means that it's not the main tool for fighting. The main tool for fighting is first going to be my upper body. My lower body is going to have the job of moving me around so I can get away. Another thing to add to this specific concept is that if I do kick, I am looking to target the lower body. So maybe I'm going to knee the groin, or I'm going to kick him in the shin or the knee, but I am not looking for a head kick, not when someone is an arm's length away. Either you're incredibly flexible to get your leg up. I am not that flexible to get my leg up, but even if I do get my leg up, he's way too close to me for me to be that off balance, right? So if I do kick, I'm only going to be looking to kick below the waist. So anything that my legs do, again, it could be a sweep, it could be a knee, is all going to be targeted below the waist. The next thing we're going to be talking about is targeting. Now again, this is a very specific context. If you are sparring with someone in class or you're fighting in the ring, this may not apply, but in a very specific context for the street, I want to be able to cause as much damage as possible in as short amount of time as possible, right? And I also want to be training in a way where the same types of strikes are applicable across the spectrum for body types. So a simple example of that would be if I'm punching someone in the stomach, someone my size, yes, I can probably cause a lot of damage maybe punching them in the stomach. But if someone's bigger than me, heavier than me, a lot more muscular than me, I am not sure someone of my size punching a 6'2" person in the stomach is really going to do that much. However, if I can attack their eyes, their nose, ears, throat, groin, targets like this, it will not end a fight, it will not stop a fight, but it will give me an advantage, or it will help me set up further powerful strikes in my quest to sort of overwhelm him so that I can get away, right? So the targets that I'm looking to hit are really, really important. Instead of me going for a jab, cross, maybe like a hook, uppercut to the body, I'm going to be targeting mainly the eyes, the ears, the throat, the groin, the nose, maybe even the chin. So now that we've established a basic context and a basic set of principles that we're going to be following, let's talk about how we're going to approach fighting somebody who's really, really close by. Within the Filipino martial arts context, or within Pikiti Toshakali, which is the art that I do, how we approach fighting someone on the street when they're when they're an arm's length away from you. I've said this again and again. A lot of our empty hands within Pikiti comes from our work with double knife in the pakal grip, right? In the ice pick grip. And one of the main things that we can take away from training in this grip is our ability to strike a lot more often than other arts. Now, what do I mean by that? We have a saying that every slash is followed by a thrust and every thrust is followed by a slash. This can apply even when we are working empty hands. What does that mean? Let's look at our basic strikes within Pikiti. So you have your angle 1 and your angle 2, your angle 1 and your angle 2. This is how I would perform them if I had a knife in my hand or a stick in my hand. However, I can also perform them the same way when I have empty hands. Let's take, before we go into that, let's take a simple boxing combination. Let's take a jab, cross, hook. As I'm punching with my jab, my cross is loaded. As the cross comes out, the jab comes back. As the cross comes back, that hook is going to fire, right? So the retraction of one is when I'm launching the other. However, in the Filipino martial arts, the retraction of an attack can also or should also be an attack. What do I mean by that? An angle 1 can be followed by an angle 2, which is followed by an angle 1, which is followed by an angle 2, which can be followed by an angle 1, which can be followed by another angle 1, which can be followed by an angle 2, another angle 1, another angle 2, another angle 1, another angle 2, another angle 1. Now, I have shown within this small combination 2 or 3 or 4 different ways that you can fire the same basic angles. You can go a hammer fist, it can be an elbow, it can be a slap, it can be a back fist, it can be almost anything else. That it can be a sort of knife hand or a ridge hand or a hack. There's so many ways that I can fire this angle. However, instead of me having to go 1, 2, I can always go 1, 2, 3. So traditionally, when I would have the space to fire 2 shots, now I can fire 4 shots. The retraction of 1 before the next one. So instead of me going 1, 2 or 1, 2 or 1, 2, I can go 1, 2, 3, 4. The retraction of the hook sets up the next hook, which has a retraction of its own, which can set up the next elbow or a cross or a straight palm strike. It's really up to you. But that retraction is going to help me to overwhelm my opponent and have a series of strikes in a very short period of time. So how do we train this? The first thing is to set in our minds a state of play. I'm experimenting, or I'm exploring, or I'm looking for ways or new ways of throwing strikes, and I can play around with almost any of the strikes that I have within my own martial arts system, within my own Filipino martial arts system. It doesn't have to be from Pikiti itself. You can work with an angle 1, you can work with an angle 2, you can work with an angle 3, you can work with an angle 4, and just find different ways that I can throw these strikes. So right now I did a hammer fist, a sort of hook or an uppercut sort of mix, and then a rising sort of back fist. I can also go slap, hack, a rising elbow this way, and maybe a rising elbow that way. Play around with it. The more that you get to play around with it, the more comfortable you're going to be. And right now, if you've noticed that all I've done is fire attacks with one hand at a time, because I need to first get comfortable with one weapon at a time. Then I go with the left hand. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I play around with my left hand, then I play around with my right hand, then I play around with my left hand. And when I'm comfortable doing this, when I'm comfortable, or when I've explored different ways of throwing that angle 1, different ways of using different parts of my arms to throw each individual angle, then I can start combining it, because in the combination of the hands is where it becomes truly devastating. I've spoken oftentimes about the way we coordinate double weapons, and these are also double weapons, and crossing, following motions, weaving motions, all of these are still applicable in empty hands. For the sake of today's video, we're sticking with following motions, because that's what you're going to be doing when you're using angle 1, 2, 3, 4 in all these different curving strikes. So I'm going angle 1, now the retraction of this, instead of me going 1 and 1, I'm going 1 and 2, and then hitting angle 1 with my left hand, then angle 2, then angle 1, then the end of the angle 1 can be a rising angle 4, which can be followed by an elbow from an angle 3 that can come down with a hammer fist angle 2, that can be a hook to a hammer fist, or a back fist followed by an elbow, followed by a hack, followed by another elbow. So you can really play around with this concept that one weapon follows the other weapon, right? And then you can start building your combinations, still keeping in mind all those 3 principles that we spoke about earlier: understanding the range, understanding what tools I'm using, understanding targets I'm using. I'm still keeping those in mind, but now I'm playing around with ways of one weapon following the other weapon. And now lastly, you can play around with your footwork. Remember what I said, my feet, the job of my feet is to get me to move to better angles so I can get away, get better tactical angles on my opponent, and then get away. So the way we're going to drill this is we're going to take anything in front of you that's going to act as a reference point. I'm going to use this brick for now, and I'm going to keep it around about an arm's length away from me, right? From here, however you want to be standing right now, we can talk about stances and guards and that stuff that in a whole other video. But whether you want to be starting from a fighting position, whether you want to be starting from a sort of more square position with your hands up, it's really up to you. But from here, once you start get comfortable with launching your attacks, whatever attacks they may be, and then very quickly within the first 3 attacks, start flanking to one side, or start flanking to the other side. So I'm starting from within an arm's length of my reference point, and maybe I'm starting to throw a basic combination, and I immediately look to get to the side. And now I'm looking to get away. Now it's easier for me to get away, and I can then switch that up as well. So let's say I'm here, I've started the combination, I've moved to one side, I've moved to the other side, I'm moving again to the other side. And once you start doing this, you'll quickly start finding that your arms will start supporting your movement. So if I'm moving to the other side, maybe I'm going to bridge with this hand. As I switch, that's going to lead itself to an uppercut right there. Follow that up with an elbow. Again, I'm going to bridge, strike, bridge and strike. Maybe I'll throw that knee in there like we spoke about, coming up with an uppercut, elbow, again, bang, 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 throw a knee in there, come back to beginning. So I'm using my feet in conjunction and my hands together. I'm striking using a frame to get to the side, which is going to support my other strikes, using a frame to get to the other side, and I'm trying to spend as little time as possible right in front of my opponent. I'm very quickly trying to get to the outside, very quickly trying to get to this side if I cannot go to that side, and I need to be able to pass to this side. But the point being, I'm looking to use my feet to get to tactically better positions where I can also get away. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked what you saw, if you learned from what you saw, please just like and share this video. Please do comment down below if you have anything else to add. Please do subscribe to the channel. All these things really do help out the school and the channel a lot. A huge thank you to all of our patrons. Thank you so much for your support. If you'd like to know more about our Patreon page and the exclusive content that we offer there, check out the link in the description down below. Lastly, thank you guys for watching and see you in the next video.